Good morning, welcome to Sports Radio 1310, The Ticket. George DiGianni, Train Station Fitness Show. In studio today, we've got a round table. I've got Dr. Kevin Light. He is medical director at the Dallas Healthy Aging Center. You've never given me that piece of paper. Can I have it back, please? We also have Erin Williams in the studio. She is a personal trainer at Equinox in Highland Park. And also Dr. Jeremy Webster. We're discussing a topic today that affects every single person that will hear this show. If you haven't had a chance, I highly encourage you to go to Facebook, look up 21 Day Body Makeover, and I posted a link that is labeled Genetic Roulette. It's not my topic or my title. The person who put this together named it Genetic Roulette, and it's a great title. They're discussing GMOs, genetically modified organisms, which are now in our food source today. What I'll bring to you, and what we'll bring to the table today, is credible evidence discussing companies that are big chemical companies such as Monsanto, or we'll maybe limit it to Monsanto since this video will discuss all of the dangers, supposed dangers of the chemical company Monsanto and how they're basically muscling their way into our health and damaging it. What is a GMO? We'll discuss that coming up next. And again, on this roundtable, Dr. Jeremy Webster offering his advice, his input, his knowledge. The same with Dr. Light, and Erin is going to be here to basically offer a female's perspective about first asking questions, number one. Number two, whatever advice she has. And number three, I will ask you later on in the show, although I'll mention it now. If you put all of this information together and you decide to get married and have a children, does it influence your decision to have a child in the first place? And if so, what do you change? So we'll talk about that coming up next at 7:03, Sports Radio 1310, The Ticket.
How we doing? We're about to thoroughly waste your time.
It's a Friday night.
1310, The Ticket, George DiGianni, Train Station Fitness Show. Discussing a topic today that I mentioned in the first segment will affect every single person's life, and it does affect people's lives who are not listening to this show, but the people particularly listening this morning. On the show, Dr. Kevin Light, medical director at Dallas Healthy Aging. Also, Erin Williams, personal trainer at Equinox Health Club in Dallas, Highland Park, and also Dr. Jeremy Webster in the studio. We're talking about a topic, GMOs. We've heard about GMOs for a while. Do you know what it is? Genetically modified organisms is where they take genes from one species and then force it into the DNA of another species. And you think, well, if it's natural, why is that a big deal? Well, if you go to 21 Day Body Makeover on Facebook, 21 Day Body Makeover, click on Genetic Roulette. There's a video. I'd like for you to watch the entire thing. What I'll do, my role today, is to bring excerpts of that and quotes from credible sources, medical doctors, scientists, researchers, and share with you some of the things they said that have affected our health by a billion-dollar company that said they will sue the state of Vermont if the state of Vermont decides to share information about GMOs not being natural or healthy for you. Do you back down, or do you go forward with helping the people of your state in the United States? Is money the motivating factor here, or is it something bigger? We'll find out as we go. What I'd like for you guys to do today, and I'll just start, is I want you to interject where you know and feel you need to because you've got some points. Do you want to start with this?
Well, the first thing I wanted to say is you mentioned that this is natural, and from the video you'll see that there's one of the things that they use genetic engineering for is to crossbreed goats and spiders.
Right.
And that's so that the goats within their milk will lay spider webs, so that they can use these the spider web for silk. And if you think that's natural,
well,
then,
to make bulletproof vest. No, I didn't say it was natural.
No, I didn't say you did.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if anyone out there thinks this is natural, tell me that spider web laying goats is natural.
Spider web laying
Spider goat.
Yeah.
Spider goat.
Yeah.
Well, you know, and here's another thing to consider is that you take genes and you insert them into a plant so that the plant won't get sick with a herbicide, for example, and this gene insertion is not very specific. It's not like microsurgery where you very delicately place one gene and away you go. What happens is there's 50, 60, 70, hundreds of different changes in that DNA. And oh, by the way, one of them does what they're trying to accomplish. And all the other genetic changes are unknown and unstudied. So whereas you might get the one effect that you're looking for, there's tons that are unexamined, and there's no science at all to determine the effect that has on the human. So these genes will create unhealthy proteins, and these unhealthy proteins are viewed as foreign and alien to the body, and that creates a whole cascade of problems, which I guess most of the show is going to be about today.
Well, now, people listening have heard all of us. Every one of you have been on the show, some of you multiple times. And sometimes, you know, you have a child and you share the information with your child because you know better, and the child tends to resist you because you're in the forest. You're too close. They'll hear the same, or if you're married, they hear the same information from someone else, and all of a sudden they start to listen to that person. You've lost all credibility. You're insignificant when it comes to knowledge when you're that close. So what we're going to do today is bring you some of the quotes, and I'll do that now, from people in this video. Here's a medical doctor, Robin Bernhoff. She's a medical director of Bernhoff of Advanced Medicine, said, from a biophysics perspective, looking at the signature of the entire gene sequence is foreign. It doesn't exist in nature. Therefore, our immune system attacks the foreign body because it doesn't recognize it as food and creates inflammation. What's the root of all disease? Chronic inflammation. That's right. That's what GMOs do. That's the first part of it. Let me get into, if you have something to say, Webster?
No, I agree.
Okay, let me get to the second part. PhD Dr. Arden Anderson, author of Real Medicine, Real Health, said, they put a virus or part of a virus on a gene during the process to turn it on. Now, we all know if we have a gene expression to turn on or attract cancer, diabetes, name the disease, and we're exacerbating that or about to turn it on with the way we're treating ourselves, certain lifestyle, even if we're trying to do the right thing, but we have the wrong foods, and we don't know we have the wrong foods, we will then attract that or turn on that expression, right?
Right. It's just like when you eat the right food, when you eat a blend of healthy greens, you're causing your genes to express properly.
Right.
There's processes that control the genes. If you don't have enough of these certain compounds, your genes don't express properly. When you eat a genetically modified food, it's possible that you're causing your genes to express inappropriately.
And what that expression means, another way to
disease.
To really picture that in your head is a gene is rolled up all in a little ball. And anytime you need to access one of these little genes, it sort of unfolds and exposes its little belly so the body can use that part, then it refolds, okay? So by expressing genes that you may not be want to express, what that means is that gene sort of unfolds and shows you little parts that your body really doesn't want to see, or maybe it's been turned off for 10,000 years, or maybe it's damaged, and so the body tends to sequester that and protect it, and these genetically modified foods can open these little sores and underbellies in your gene that usually would be unexpressed. That's a good way to
and what we've said for forever, if you have heart disease in your family or cancer, just because you're predisposed to have something doesn't mean it's inevitable. You can make it inevitable,
but you can tuck it away.
Or you can tuck it away.
Right.
Medical Dr. Martha Grout, medical doctor for the Arizona Center of Advanced Medicine, said, quote, the diseases we deal with have inflammation. Are allergies and autoimmune diseases associated with GMOs? Wouldn't we all say that they are? By what we've just learned in this short snippet of time that's gone by?
I would, especially since what we're going to learn later is how they cause gut disruption.
Right.
They mess up your gut, so you start absorbing all these different particles into your bloodstream. Things that shouldn't be in your bloodstream. See,
right.
When you eat
literally crap, undigested food and crap. I mean, if we're gonna be honest here, let's tell people you're leaking crap into your bloodstream.
Well, it's early on, but it's
early crap.
It's early. It's early. It's really.
It's not something that
really
if it was on the table and all of a sudden that you could eat it. It's disgusting.
It's not so much that it's crap. It's that it's food that hasn't been fully broken down yet.
Right.
So you eat a steak. You're not supposed to absorb steak into your bloodstream. You're supposed to. Your digestive juices, the enzymes, the acid is supposed to break this down. And once it gets broken down to a small enough particle, that can fit through your gastrointestinal system into your bloodstream. What happens when you have leaky gut, and it looks like it is caused by genetically modified foods.
Right.
Then you start getting these whole chunks of steak absorbed into your bloodstream. Your body doesn't know what to do with steak in your blood.
Right. Now, when you say chunks of
acids.
steak, it's so unbelievably small. It's not the chunks that we may think of.
Right,
but it's not.
But it's halfway between a bite of steak
Right.
and an amino acid.
Sure.
It's like it's not broken down fully into its individual parts. Your body knows what to do with an amino acid. You build hormones, you put them back together to build an eyeball or a liver or a heart. You know what to do with amino acids. You don't know what to do with these strands of beef steak or chicken cartilage or whatever
Right.
else you're putting in your mouth as food.
Aaron, I want you to comment on this. Deputy Director for the FDA, Michael Taylor. Now, doesn't that tell you that we have somebody who's in our backyard fighting for us? He's the Deputy Director of the FDA.
You would hope so.
You would hope so. He said, quote, "The FDA's job is to protect the food supply. Making it safe and nutritious is one of the most governmental duties of the FDA." What does that tell you about this person? Do you feel safe with what I've just said so far?
From what you've said, yes.
Yeah, you should feel safe. This person's here to protect our food supply. Now let's give you a little background about Michael Taylor, the Deputy Director for the FDA. The current FDA policy stance on GMOs, created in 1992, shows the FDA was unaware of any information showing the different or greater safety concerns. Therefore, safety studies are not necessary. We're going to keep moving forward. However, in 1998, a lawsuit forced 44,000 secret internal memos into the public. The attorney who filed the suit said the FDA's scientific staff showed GMOs are dangerous and urged their superiors to perform long-term studies. But the FDA, which Michael Taylor is the deputy director of, the FDA said they disregarded their research and presented it otherwise. Okay, Michael Taylor, you know who he is? He's the person who was in charge of Monsanto's chemical company. He was the former attorney, later Monsanto's vice president, and then back at the FDA as the food czar. Monsanto is the same company that told us Agent Orange, you're going to comment on this in a moment, and PCPs and DDT were safe, and now they're saying GMOs are safe. So, do you still feel safe, Aaron, with our deputy director of the FDA being in charge of our food supply?
No, not at all.
What does that tell you?
It tells me that we don't know who's in charge. We don't have anyone protecting us.
We don't, do we?
No.
Most people will think that the FDA is looking out for our best interests. The government's looking out for our best interests. Why should we believe you, George, Kevin, and Webster? Why should we believe you guys? You're presenting this information. You've got a bias. Well, we really don't. Are we making money on this show?
I'm not.
I mean, we're not making money on this. This doesn't benefit me in any way, any of us here. We're just trying to present the information that we've been taught by medical doctors who are speaking out, research scientists speaking out. Oh, and by the way, the medical or the deputy director of the FDA just happens to be the guy who was in the back pocket of Monsanto, a billion-dollar
And what's
company.
interesting, if you watch that tape, which we all have, is it's not just the FDA, it's the Department of Agriculture, it's the USDA. All these leaders are drawn from industry, and it's sort of like crony capitalism. It's all drawn from industry, and they're placed in high government jobs. And what they can do is they can influence policy while they're in office to help set up their companies, and once they get out of office, they are back at Monsanto and the other corporations to do what they do.
Quickly comment on why Agent Orange is bad. What is it? Where did it come from? You were in the Air Force, so you know about it.
All I know is a chemical exfoliant that had a lot of neurotoxic side effects. Other than that, George, that was 1972. I've read that stuff in years.
Agent Orange was used in Vietnam.
In Vietnam as an exfoliant. It would clear the landscape so they could kill people better.
Right.
And it was generally said to be or non-dangerous, and of course it's proved to be extremely dangerous, and we have a lot of vets who are still suffering from the effects of Agent Orange.
There are zero regulations for GMOs. Okay, we know GMOs
You don't even have to put it on the label of a piece of a food.
I know. There's zero regulation.
Right.
Like I said earlier about Vermont being threatened to be sued by Monsanto. The FDA doesn't approve any GMO crop, therefore the companies like Monsanto can produce whatever scientific evidence they want and present it the way they want to present it. It's voluntary information. So if the FDA wants further information, which they've asked for before, by the way, the FDA is typically ignored, and then the FDA sends a letter to Monsanto saying it's their responsibility to determine the foods are safe.
Right. That was one of the most interesting parts of the whole movie to me, is that even when the FDA would request something, Monsanto would either ignore them, first of all, or they would present science that they themselves performed. And some of the doctors that were speaking said, hey, this is Monsanto doing a study that is too short in duration,
Yes.
doesn't look at the right things, they're not doing the right statistics, they're basically creating junk science, and that's all that's presented to the FDA, and that's all that the FDA even wants. They don't want an independent company even, not that they don't want it. They don't request it, or they don't mandate that there's independent research that looks at the danger in these things.
Medical Dr. Lawrence Plumlee, former medical science advisor to the EPA and Research and Development, said, quote, he thinks this is the most alarming thing he has seen in Washington, that they would clear products as safe when they are clearly not, and that money must be the reason. No!
Say it ain't so.
I've got a little twist. Here comes George DiGianni with the way his mind works. Conspiracy here. Is it possible, and I'll ask you first, Aaron, is it possible that some big interest group is trying to control the population?
It's confusing, and I never thought that could be possible, but that's what it sounds like.
To me, it sounds like more than money.
Really, I think it sounds only like money. I
Well,
think the
okay,
whole thing
hold on.
is about dollars.
Do we have enough room in the United, and I don't know the answer, I'm asking the question.
Are
Do
you
we have
thinking this
enough
is like
room in
a
the United States to
population
keep
thing?
growing
You
as
think-
fast as we're growing?
Well, sure we do.
We do.
Of course we do.
Okay. So we could have as many babies as we want and we're fine.
Well, within reason, but in the near future, it's not. The way corporations work, they work on short-term goals, and short-term goals is dollars and cents. It's really
Right.
not. I don't think it's a grand government conspiracy or corporate conspiracy to control our population.
Okay.
That problem's 100 years off. Problem immediately now is how do I get my best returns to my investors so
Okay.
that I keep my job.
And I'm not disagreeing. It was posing a question.
Right.
Are they trying? Is there something bigger here we're not aware of? Is it always about the money? Because they
No,
know
what-
we're always going to blame the
Well,
money.
It's sort of like the pharmaceutical companies. They can't patent compounded or natural products. Well, the big companies like Monsanto, they have to create a seed market, and then they have to create all the chemicals that go around that seed market. So they're just creating this bundle of product for the farmers to generate cash and income.
Coming up next, GMO animal studies, what the American Academy of Environmental Medicine showed in their research. 725, Sports Radio 1310, The Ticket. 733, Sports Radio 1310, The Ticket. George DiGianni, Train Station Fitness Show. Mike Tyson's coming to Dallas, so log on to theticket.com for your chance to win a pair of tickets to Mike Tyson's Undisputed Truth, live at the Verizon Theater on February 19th. You can even have a chance to meet him by registering, so log on now and get registered. In the studio, Dr. Kevin Light, Dr. Jeremy Webster, and Aaron Williams. We're all discussing the facts and the dangers of genetically modified foods, known as GMOs, genetically modified organisms, where they're playing with the genetic mutations of our natural resources and expecting our body to absorb these and recognize these as something natural and useful when it's actually completely contradictory to what our body recognizes and can do with these so-called foods. I left you with this earlier. The American Academy of Environmental Medicine and Research showed GMO animal studies of infertility, immune problems, accelerated aging, complications with cholesterol and insulin, and changes in the liver, kidney, spleen, and gastrointestinal system. In the soil, a soil bacterium called Bt used as spray will kill insects, and scientists thought if they would insert this Bt, a soil bacterium, into corn and cotton, that the corn can do the killing. And while it may be true, what is it doing to us? PhD Dr. Elaine Ingham, chief scientist at Rodale Institute, said every cell within that plant produces a toxic protein. Bt is designed to break open the stomach of bugs and kill them.
Makes me real happy to eat this corn.
Yeah, so all this stuff is scary, but where's the application? If I go tell this to my clients, what makes them care?
Exactly. You're breaking open bug stomachs, not affecting us. But when medical doctors, plural, not one in particular, saw this research, they thought it might be the cause of the increased gastrointestinal problems.
Right, so
Like
so it gets the bug's stomach to explode. So what's it doing to the lining of your intestines? And what they infer is that it inflames the lining, like Jeremy spoke of earlier, and then all kinds of chunks and particles get laid into our bloodstream, we have problems. The other thing it does, which is really interesting, is all these abnormal elements that are in your bloodstream turn your immune system on. Now your immune system is working on hyperdrive. And they've shown that this can cause rheumatoid arthritis, all kinds of autoimmune diseases. So that's where the rubber hits the road, and why do we care? Because if it can blow up a bug's stomach, it's definitely having an effect on your stomach.
Now, we know the FDA isn't on our side. They don't have enough balls to help us and stand up for us. So let's see who else is against us. The EPA. Because the EPA said, Environmental Protection Agency said, BT toxin is harmless, Dr. Light. It doesn't hurt humans and animals. But in 2012, a study showed it breaks open the pores in human cells, known as...
Well, specifically in the gut, leaky gut.
Leaky gut. You may have heard a chiropractor or a medical doctor talk about leaky gut. Do you know what leaky gut is, Aaron?
Barely.
It's this phenomenon that supposedly doesn't exist. That's what a lot of people say. A lot of the, well...
That's like fibromyalgia didn't exist,
right.
And all of a sudden now it's recognized. What was it recognized maybe 10 years after people, particularly women, were complaining about it for so long? It's in your head. Don't worry about it. Now it's real.
Your gut's literally breaking apart, breaking open, and allowing food, undigested food, to leak in there. And like Dr. Light was saying, when you're exposed to something, or when you get something in your blood that isn't supposed to be there, your body doesn't know what it is. We recognize vitamins, minerals, essential fats, and amino acids in our bloodstream. If it's not one of those things, pretty much, or if it's one of your blood cells, of course, but if it's not one of those basic nutrients, your body just assumes that it's a virus or a bacteria. So as Dr. Light said, you turn on your immune system, you try to destroy that. Now think about this. How close is your own joint tissue to the cartilage in a chicken? It's very close. The protein strands are almost identical, or maybe they are identical in some places. And that's how your immune system works. It looks at the protein strand, makes a killer, an antibody, to destroy that thing that's in your blood, which should be a virus or a bacteria. It's fine. We don't have bacteria in our joints or in our brain or in our nervous system. But we do have cartilage. So when you start to try to destroy cartilage that's leaked into your bloodstream, you can end up destroying your own cartilage. That's rheumatoid arthritis.
Now, what people may not know, Aaron, you say, well, as a personal trainer, how do I bring this back to my clients? There's little snippets you can take from the show, little factoids, if you will, and there's one that I learned a long time ago. In the area that Dr. Webster's talking about, we have colon sites, right? And they're between 1 and 300 microns apart.
Right.
And the reason they're only 1 to 300 microns apart, so we don't leak these food particles into our blood, right? When we have NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, so you have naproxen, which is Aleve, ibuprofen, right? We know what ibuprofen is, and we have even regular aspirin. If you have these for 3 consecutive days or longer, or these type of foods we're discussing on the show today, you go from 1 to 300 microns to like 4 or 500 to 600 microns, which makes a bigger gap and allows the food to leak into your system. Then you start having all these ailments, and you're like,
what are the ailments?
Well, some of the things that Dr. Webster mentioned, you have inflammation, so you have chronic, you have pain in your joints, and then it can lead to a whole host of other things if it's chronic inflammation.
It could be thyroiditis, autoimmune thyroid disease, multiple sclerosis,
ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome.
Any type of autoimmune disease.
What about the people that don't have any of these symptoms yet?
If they're eating these foods, they have the symptoms. And how many times have you heard the show where I've said your body speaks to you every single day, not in English, but in symptoms? Sugar cravings, sleepless nights, pain, disease, and on and on and on. If you don't listen to it, it speaks louder.
Let me say this.
Right?
I do food allergy testing or food sensitivity testing on most of my patients. I have had now one total person that had no food sensitivities.
Out of how many people would you say? 1,000?
1,000.
Isn't that something?
One person out of 1,000 who has not had, their immune system has not been attacking foods because that food is leaking into their gut.
So I have good news and I have bad news. Who's ready for the good news?
Me.
Yes.
Ready? The good news is that there are only 9 GMO food crops. Only 9. I'll share them with you. Soy, corn, cottonseed oil, canola oil. By the way, canola oil stands for?
It's rapeseed.
Canadian oil company, right? There's no canola seed.
It's rapeseed.
Right.
Yeah, but it's not. You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying.
You know where I'm
I didn't know that though.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's pretty
yeah.
cool.
Sugar beets, papaya, zucchini, yellow crooked neck, squash, and alfalfa. And you may say, well, George, I don't eat any of those things. I'm healthy. You ready for the bad news? The bad news is the derivatives of all these 9 are found in over 70 or 71 processed foods that we currently eat or drink. Soda, chips, anything with high fructose corn syrup, and on and on and on.
And anything that's processed, because as corn or soy, almost guaranteed in
Webster, how can you say that? I have a soy latte and soy milk. I don't want to have antibiotics and hormones. I'm being healthy.
Okay. It's soy.
It's not real
It could be
soy.
Soy's healthy for me, Webster.
It's genetically modified soy.
Exactly, and that's the whole purpose.
Bad soy.
Not only is it genetically modified if you're eating soybeans, okay, or natural fermented soy, but when you look at soy milk or anything like that, I don't know if you know this, Aaron, but let's just take soy milk, soy ice cream for a moment. What happens is anything that was natural and healthy for you from a nutrient standpoint in the soy is, with the high heat that they use to make these products, is now completely gone. There's no nutrients left. In addition to that, what you are left with are carcinogens because of the high heat, which we know cause cancer.
So what about the soybeans?
Soybeans in themselves, like we just said, if they're genetically modified, which we know them to be in the United States anyway.
All of them are. So we're saying that every single soybean, edamame in restaurants.
Actually, 70. What was the
United
statistic in the film? 94% of the soy crops in the United States are genetically modified.
Yes.
88% of the corn crops are genetically modified. So for the most part, unless it says otherwise, you can assume anything with soy, anything with corn is genetically modified.
Like when you go to a store, or when you go to a restaurant and you have steak. I know I love steak. Well, I love it when I have it. I rarely have it. But I also know it's not an organic, hormone-free steak. I know this going into it. They're not going to serve that, and if they did, they would tell you. So when you go to have edamame or anywhere else, they're going to tell you if it has no GMOs, if it's safe, and it is, you're going to pay a lot more money for it. So you can assume it isn't. We've been consuming GMOs for over 20 years, and have you noticed that there's more disease, and is there a connection? And here I could all think that we would safely say yes. But who are we to prove that? That's why I brought these experts to the table. Medical Dr. John Boyle, immunologist, there's some credibility for you, said he keeps his patients with allergies away from GMOs.
Exactly what we were talking about earlier. You start leaking stuff into your bloodstream, you start responding to things, your immune system starts attacking things. That's basically what an allergy is.
How
It's
about
your
a
immune
doctor
system
who
responding
works
to
with the
something-
military? They have some good insight, don't they?
Probably, yeah.
They're sought out for because they have some good credibility and great science, some research background. PhD, Dr. John Huber, Purdue University. Been a scientist with professional and military agencies for 40 years. He's evaluated and prepared for natural and man-made biological threats, including germ warfare and disease outbreak. He believes, his quote, that the threat we are faced with from this pathogen, the GMOs we're talking about, is unique and of high risk and should be treated as an emergency. Not George DiGianni's words or anybody else in here or the station. This is this person who had direct access to our government.
Scary.
Right. Well, he made the comment in the film that, and many others did as well, that chronic disease in all of its guises has increased fourfold in the last 20 years. I mean, a fourfold increase of everything: heart disease, cancer, autoimmune disease, inflammation, allergies, all kinds of disease processes. Fourfold increase in all of them across the board.
One of the things you'll also notice is when you look at the video, if anybody's newly listening to the show today, go to Facebook, enter 21 Day Body Makeover. You can click on the video and watch it. It's an hour and 24 minutes long. It could save your life. If you don't care about yourself, how about your children or your significant other? Watch it, become informed, and then make an educated choice, decision. But
George, I wanted to mention
go
something.
ahead.
Earlier you mentioned steak in a restaurant, just your basic steak. The scary thing is, if you watch this video, you learn that the genes that are in the soy and in the corn, by the way, that's what they're feeding cows these
Right.
days. They're finding that those genes are indeed passed on, at least to the bacteria in the intestinal system of the cow.
And it can stay with us forever.
It becomes part of the cow, then we eat the cow, and it can be part of our gastrointestinal system. And yeah, we might not get rid of it.
Researchers, scientist Dr. Huber, who I mentioned earlier, said there were studies with pigs that showed allergy response from GMO foods reproduced all physiological changes seen in the intestine, the same inflammatory response they see in autistic children.
Yeah, I saw that too. They make a soft connection between this and autism.
Yeah, but guess what? I have to interject for a moment. This is important. They make a soft one. Here's a more credible one, being a doctor. An oncologist, cancer doctor, medical doctor Michael Williamson has a 9.5-year-old son diagnosed with autism 6 years ago. So he started doing his research, and once he learned about GMOs, he changed his son's diet, took all GMOs out, and found a huge success, such a positive one. He said that we're going to continue on with this because he's made such a vast improvement.
Right, and that's really good to hear, and there's a lot of anecdotal stories that highlight that. I'm just cautioning that there's really been no science and studies to support that, but however to suggest that, but it's certainly something to consider, especially with the skyrocketing autism rates that we see. I mean,
Skyrocketing.
Is it the food or what else? There's other elements in our environment, however, but...
And it doesn't have to be just it's the GMOs that are causing this, or just the vaccines that are causing this. It's probably this perfect storm of multiple things causing this.
I agree.
All the kids that I've ever seen with autism, I shouldn't say all, but virtually all, they have gut issues. Every single one of them. They're constipated, they have gastrointestinal, just inflammation in their system.
Right.
So that's one of the things you need to attack. You need to detox them. You need to do a lot of things. You need to nourish their brain. But to say that this isn't going to help, I think is probably wrong. I think this will help tremendously. It's not the cure-all.
It can't hurt you to tell somebody to eat healthy.
It's not the panacea, but it probably can make a big difference, at least getting that kid going in the right direction.
So the chemical that we know, the herbicide called Roundup, you use it to kill your seed, kill your weeds, and also grass and weeds in between cracks. Would you drink it? You say, George, you're a freaking idiot. Would I drink it? Well, you're eating it. Let me tell you more about that coming up next. It's 746, Sports Radio 1310, The Ticket.
Bad for you.
753, Sports Radio 1310, The Ticket. George DiGianni, Train Station Fitness Show. Guests in the studio, Aaron Williams, personal trainer, Equinox Club in Highland Park of Dallas. 214-443-9009 if you want to speak with her about training. I trust her. I like her. She's like Tina Burnett. Very good trainer. Dr. Jeremy Webster, CompleteHealthDallas.com or 972-735-0707 to get in touch with him. And Dr. Kevin Light. It's K-Light, L-I-G-H-T, at DHAClinic.com. K-Light at DHAClinic.com.
Hey, George, on the break we had a text that we wanted to answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
The text basically asked, how do we know if we're getting supplements that don't have GMO foods? And the simple answer that I have... Yeah. And the simple answer, I know for a fact that all of my supplements are non-GMO. And I know for a fact that all the supplements that you use, George, are non-GMO. I don't know how you're going to know this looking on the label of a typical supplement. I'm just not sure, but I know for a fact because I've
contacted the manufacturer to see if I could have non-GMO put on my labels.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah.
Is it put on any labels?
No.
Not that I'm aware of.
No.
So how do you know? You buy the stuff off the shelf, it may or may not.
Crapshoot.
Let me go through some of this. An herbicide that many of us are aware of, especially if you do the landscaping in your own home, called Roundup, is used to kill weeds in your yard. Monsanto used it in 1974 to kill as an herbicide on crops. The chemical kills weeds by robbing the plants of nutrients. It weakens the soil. The animals eat the plants, become deficient and sick, and then we eat the animals and in turn become deficient, or we don't have enough nutrients, hence the reason for supplementation. We've mentioned this forever. How do we know we need this supplement? Even if you eat a perfect diet, you're most likely not getting all the nutrients you need. Lab animals such as rats were fed Roundup Ready soy, a GMO that's found and changes the uterus, the ovaries, and more than half of their babies died within 3 weeks and were smaller and could not reproduce, and the testicles from these lab rats changed from pink to blue. But it's safe! Hey! Monsanto said it's safe. Give me some more of that, please.
And this was the part where they talked about how Roundup's, the way it works basically is to starve the plant of nutrients, right? And they found that these Roundup Ready crops we're doing exactly the same thing. When you eat them, they're real strong chelators is what happens.
Right.
Chelating, we talk about chelating, meaning, when we talk about our
binding,
our minerals that we give, we want them to be chelated. Well, that means that the mineral is bound to a protein. Chelate doesn't mean good or bad, it means something specific. Well, in this case, it's chelating nutrients, meaning your nutrients can't be absorbed by your body, so it's more or less starving you. Not calories, but micronutrients. You can't have the vitamins and minerals. You can't absorb your vitamins and minerals if you eat these foods because they bind to everything that's good.
Aaron, do you like milk?
I do like milk.
I got one for you. Monsanto scientists took cow genes and added them to E. coli bacteria to help produce a hormone for cows. That's number one. It produced mastitis, which is an inflammation of the udder, which produced more pus, and then antibiotics were added to the milk, and it produces higher IGF-1 levels. Dr. Webster, what happens when someone has very high IGF levels?
Your risk of cancer increases.
Oh my God, are you sure the FDA would let us have milk that does that?
Yeah, I'm sure they would, and I'm also sure that it increases cancer risk.
Dr. Light, you're aware of this, I know. RBGH. Chemical that's banned in 27 countries.
Right.
Now, we all know that if everyone says something about us and we disagree with it, and you have 27 people who concur with the same answer about you, good or bad or indifferent, doesn't matter, not everybody can be wrong. What'd you say?
I would say.
The FDA said they didn't receive the same data as the people in the 27 other countries who banned this RBGH. Then they came back after they were confronted and said they did receive it, but only in part. Then they were confronted again. And then they said they received it in full, but didn't know how to apply the law.
Why does the FDA exist?
Good question.
I went back and actually read the Constitution, and it is not in there. The 10th Amendment said the federal government can't do something unless specified in the Constitution. Post roads, military, print and borrow money, tax, regulate the commerce between the states. That's all that the Congress can officially do. The FDA is unconstitutional, as is the USDA. Why do they even exist?
I've got another one for you that's kind of fun. If the FDA doesn't ban these substances and don't care about our health, I think we've kind of repeated that information and said that this is a truism by what we've learned, right? Why in the world would Starbucks switch its milk to a non-hormone milk? Walmart, Yoplait, Ben & Jerry's, Dan & Yogurt, and others say they will not sell milk that has hormones in it, but the FDA will not ban it.
No.
Are we to assume the most popular coffee house in the world and local grocery stores have our best interest at heart more than our government?
No. You shouldn't assume that. What they're doing is they're doing it based on popular interest. If the public demands it, it's good for their business.
But if the public demands it, shouldn't the government change it as well?
Yeah, you would think.
Well, maybe not.
We demand it. Don't we elect people in office due to the demand?
I think that's the way to fight this whole thing. I think you have public outcry, and it's forced Walmart and Starbucks and Ben & Jerry's to change their policies. And I think that when people become more aware of this problem, it'll snowball, and then the government will have to act, or at least allow other independents to do the right thing, because the government, their goal is not necessarily to do the right thing; it's to keep keep their friends in power.
Even though the budget of the FDA is $2.5 billion, and USDA, this is even crazier, $155 billion for the USDA.
I have to share this real fast. Medical doctor Doris Rapp said if a woman consumes GMOs while she's pregnant, she's affecting the development of her child and will cause a disaster in time. Her quotes: women trying to become pregnant should avoid all GMO foods for the least 2 weeks prior to becoming pregnant and while pregnant. Aaron, I asked you earlier, if you were intending on having a child, would you think twice about having that child, bringing that child into this world?
I would absolutely think about that. I don't even know what to eat now, much less if I was pregnant.
And you're a person trying to be healthy.
Absolutely.
That's scary.
I didn't know what to eat for breakfast.
We gonna tell them how to avoid the food?
Yes. What I'm going to do is, and we don't have time for that. If you go to Facebook, go to 21 Day Body Makeover. I'll have this video up today, and I'm also going to put the link that shows you non-GMO foods, so you'll be able to click on that and see how that can benefit you.
And in a sentence, avoid soy and avoid corn, and if you don't, make sure that it's organic and it won't be GMO.
And they actually are labeling some foods voluntarily now that says non-GMO.
Yeah, they are labeling
public
demand.
Not the government, but public demand.
Right.
Which will change it because everything seems to come from California, and they've known about this for so many years. So many years. Why is it someone like Rick, though, who eats healthy, Rick from T-Box is in here, he eats healthy, exercises, looks great, no disease, but Rick is not the guy who eats perfect and tries to avoid these GMOs. Why is it that Rick can look as good as he does and not have these adverse symptoms that we discussed with so many people?
It's the robustness of the individual.
Right, the health of the individual, what they're doing as a whole, globally, to take care of themselves.
Yep. Your genetics, your upbringing, all the things that you've eaten for the last 30, 40
Right.
years, that affects what you do now. So you might be able to get away with eating a whole pizza once a week. The guy sitting next to you might not.
Right.
So if we're healthy, we don't need to worry about it then.
No,
Is that
no,
what you're
no.
saying?
That's not true
That's
at all.
not true
It's a
whatsoever.
good way to
You
ruin
won't
your
stay
health.
healthy if you don't worry
Yeah,
about
but
it.
isn't everything? We talk about this all the time. everything in moderation.
No, that's not true. That's the whole point. You've said that, and I've not fought you on it. But you said you hate that?
I hate that statement.
Yeah.
Why? Because
it's not true.
I want vegetables in abundance, not moderation. I don't want mercury.
No,
in
when I say about
moderation,
I'm talking about moderation. I'm talking about when you like binge on a pizza one night, or you binge on ice cream, or whatever. It's in moderation. You don't pack it in 7 days a week.
I don't think binging and moderation are compatible terms.
I don't think so.
No, they're the opposite. So
no,
binging is
well,
not moderation.
Well, what I'm going to say about binging, like when George and I talk about George, you'll have a whole pumpkin pie one night. Or I'll eat a whole pizza one night. What?
It does affect me.
Yeah, as long as but if you don't have it every day, I mean,
it's not about having it every day. You and I guess everybody kind of in this room lives a different type of lifestyle. For the majority of the people listening who aren't as healthy, let's say, if they were to do something one time, you have this IgG immediate response, right? Yes. And when you get this immediate response, your eyes get itchy, you start sneezing, you have bloated, you're gassy, you have fatigue, foggy head, you can't sleep at night. Those are all the symptoms from eating the food. Now you say, well, George, if I do that just one night, or I go out and get wasted one night, it's not a big deal. I fix myself the next day, and a day or two later I feel better. Fine, but if you continue to do that, your body says, I'm not going to allow you to have this recuperation anymore, this recovery. And so let me talk to you in a much louder way that you're going to hear. And that's when it shows up in disease.
And oftentimes people can get away with it until they finally can't get away with it. You develop a gluten sensitivity. Before you had your gluten sensitivity, you might be able to eat a pizza or anything with wheat and not have any issues. Maybe you feel sluggish for a day or two, but you develop a wheat sensitivity, all of a sudden it takes you 9 months to clear that stuff out of your system before you finally feel back to normal. Literally one breadcrumb can put you back to day one if you're really severely allergic to wheat.
And if you've conditioned yourself to now be allergic to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you read about stories all the time of guys live to be 100, and what do they do every day? Well, they
smoke.
They smoke, they drink,
Because what we just said earlier on is if that is not part of your genetic expression, you're not going to turn that on and all of a sudden get cancer from smoking. There's people who stop smoking and die.
Right.
Yeah. But do you want to play genetic roulette with something you're not aware of, whether you're going to have a certain gene turned on or not? Why not take care of yourself now?
I just think that everybody overreacts to everything that's going on. You read a report that's 6 months says, this is bad. And then a year from now, no, it's actually pretty good. The whole egg theory. Well, eggs you weren't supposed to eat.
What about eggs?
Yeah.
You have to look at where the source is. I mean, you look at if the FDA
but if you're a regular guy, if you're a regular person consuming information, you get bombarded with all this stuff. You can either take everything to heart and be a paranoid, or you just I won't have eggs every day. I'll have some in the morning, once a week, twice a week. So as long as it doesn't adversely affect me, who cares?
Well, I think you have to recognize if it's affecting you or not. You have to be aware. That's first of all. Second of all,
that's easy though.
It's easy for us.
Easy.
No.
It's definitely not easy.
I think it's easy to know if you're affected adversely or not.
You can feel if you have gastrointestinal permeability.
If it's normal, if it's normal to you.
You don't feel leaky gut occurring until it's...
What's up, George?
Hey, buddy.
You have an autoimmune disease.
And everybody else.
The other thing is, I think before you go on, Craig,
No, I want to talk.
No, I want you to. But
but I'm going first.
Go ahead.
Because I have a good point. I kept getting indigestion. When I was a fat ass, I kept getting indigestion. I had no idea why I was getting it. As soon as I took all wheat out of my diet, I don't have indigestion anymore.
Right.
I can eat anything else. And I don't
so what I was saying is, if you looked at that video or listened to the show, I'd say none of us. All we did is repeat the information. If you listen to or look at the video and watch the credible experts who still have their jobs, they're not angry people who lost their jobs, and are reporting this and discussing the effects of these type of foods in our lives, then you can't just dismiss it and say, okay, the next time I read a study the FDA puts out, I'll believe it. Maybe it's important to look deeper or not believe that and continue on with what you have in your life. The other point I want to make is people who are not fit at all, it's very hard for them to recognize when they eat a certain food that they have any adverse effects whatsoever because they're always feeling like crap.
Right.
Sugar cravings, highs and lows in energy during the day. They feel horrible when they wake up in the morning. They take stimulants like coffee and other things to try to get themselves going on and on and on. And this becomes the new norm.
Well, I was going to ask Webster, what's the craziest food allergy? Have you been testing? You said over 1,000 people. What's the craziest food allergy you've detected?
What do you mean by crazy? Like the most common, or
no, crazy? Like
most uncommon.
Yeah, either it's the craziest something somebody's allergic to, or the most how they were affected by it.
I had a lady, if you looked at her, you'd think she was the healthiest person on earth. She was actually a dietitian herself, and she was kind of on board with everything we do. She ate as healthy, quote-unquote healthy, as you could possibly imagine. We did a test, but she was having headaches all the time. We did a test. Her 4 allergies were salmon, avocado, walnuts, and blueberries.
When you're allergic to something, you increase inflammation.
And I said, what do you eat every day? She said, pretty much salmon, avocados, walnuts, and blueberries. And she eliminated those, substituted different foods, and just the headaches were gone.
So to go back to what Rick was saying earlier about being aware of when we eat something and being aware of it, the more healthy you are, the faster and easier you'll recognize a response from doing something that does not agree with you. So when you're super unhealthy or just not, you just don't care at all, it's harder to recognize it. So you and I, it's kind of hard to speak to everybody when we say that. I just wanted to expand upon that.
No, that's a good point. I'll give you that.
So what's big in the golf world?
Forming enhancing drug.
Tiger still
deer
playing?
antler spray.
Yeah, deer antler spray. Had you ever heard of it before it came out?
Never had.
Have you ever eaten deer antler?
Really?
But it increases IGF-1, from what I understand.
Deer antler spray's got RG1 in it.
NG1?
NG1.
IGF-1?
IGF-1, thank you. IGF-1 in it.
Insulin-like growth factor.
And so they take it out of the deer antlers because it naturally grows in there.
So it's a supplement that they're using?
They spray it in their mouths, so it directly goes into their bloodstream. Because apparently if you use it, you try to take it, it spoils very quickly.
So you can't do it topically.
It's been around for a while.
You can't put it in your juice.
Yeah, long time.
But it's a banned substance.
A buddy of mine, Guy Mesger, he's a world champion.
It's naturally occurring in your bloodstream.
Right,
and
but
your body,
if you,
body
let's take two
occurs
people.
it.
You eat absolutely perfectly. You get the right amount of sleep, and you exercise, burst training, all the good stuff. Rick eats horribly, doesn't exercise at all, doesn't sleep well, gets up several times a night, doesn't release growth hormone properly, right? Who's going to have a better, more balanced IGF level?
Probably me.
You. So, if he takes his and gets a better advantage over you, is that fair? If he takes it and gets all these benefits from it over time...
But there's all sorts of... You could say that about almost any supplement, though, right?
You could also say that about any food, if you know the right food to have to give you the right energy and focus before you play.
So I'm not...
When does it stop?
Well, you could take zinc and improve your testosterone levels, potentially.
But testosterone is naturally occurring in your body, too, right? And that's
you wouldn't say zinc is a performance-enhancing drug.
Right, but if you increase it... When you take a test, and you guys can comment on this, Dr. Light, Dr. Webster, when you take a test about seeing increased levels of testosterone, if you increase your testosterone, it's done naturally, but you see a difference from the time you tested testosterone a year ago to later on, but all of a sudden you did it naturally, you might suspect that this person's taking testosterone when all they did was take the right amount of supplements and eat well, and all of a sudden exercise differently. Yeah. And that's not fair. And you blame somebody for taking testosterone, well, maybe they didn't.
So I say you take everything off the board.
Let's see everything.
Just let it go. Just let it go.
No, you can't do it, Rick, because of what?
I want to let it go.
No, but you can't.
I can.
You can't.
That's my point.
That's his choice.
You can argue.
Do you think golfers are taking steroids?
Yes.
Yep.
Come on.
Not all.
Absolutely.
What's the goal?
What's the value of taking steroids?
Of playing golf? I don't know.
What's the value?
Okay, focus and longer drive.
No. Why would an athlete, any athlete,
stronger,
be stronger,
and
recover better?
Recover
better. Well, there's other things you can do to recover better.
If a guy's hitting 1,000 golf balls and he can take steroids and recover better and hit another 1,000 golf balls tomorrow, why would he take it?
Okay, so can you?
Such an advantage.
I don't know if you feel comfortable saying this. Can you tell us one person on the tour?
No.
You can't. Okay. The reason I'm asking is if somebody's taking a steroid to recover better, they're going to get some ancillary benefits of that, which is strength and growth in their muscles. And if they get that, it may affect their shot. When if it affects your shot, does it affect your game?
Should it positively affect, right?
Not necessarily, because if you have a gut, and we've discussed this before, if you have a gut and you swing one way and you lose that gut, you lose a bunch of weight, you're going to adversely affect your swing. You have to relearn that swing, right?
Could be. Could.
But there's not many guts on the tour these days.
Well, but my point is if a guy starts getting big and bulky, he will affect his range of motion and his play.
Okay, you can look at it like
not
this,
if he has one of you guys working on his range of motion.
That's a good point, too.
That's true.
But like, nobody would probably admit that steroids would help your putting.
Right.
Okay.
Unless you're talking about focus, because if it helps your focus,
and
it'll help your
endurance.
putting.
If you're tired, it affects everything.
Endurance is huge in putting. People don't realize that bending over and practicing putting is grueling.
Well, the focus part too. It makes you tired.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the end of the round, or your mind starts wandering just because you're tired, I want to get off the course. So any of that stuff is added benefit to the end goal.
So should we say that, and I know this is being silly, just bear with me, should we say that all of the athletes if they want to take them, should take testosterone under the advice of a medical doctor that's there that makes sure the levels are all.
That's where Rick and I disagree, where he says you should just let it open for everything and see. And I say that's a really poor example we're sending to our kids.
Agreed.
And you can't let that happen because you can't look at a high school kid and say, okay, they're doing it there. That's why they're so much better.
All right.
Why don't I take it?
Okay, before we get all pious, though, if we watch a movie actor, we listen to a rock star at a concert, we don't care what they do for the end benefit, for the end result.
Agreed.
Okay? So why does athletes, why is it any different? We'd much rather watch 600-foot home runs than 2-to-1 ball games.
That's why I don't think there'll ever be a real answer other than where it is right now, because you can see the advantages to both sides of the argument.
Yeah, you want to protect the kids, but ultimately we want to be entertained. We're paying big money for all this stuff, and I'd rather have my favorite rock band put together a great show for my $200 ticket than be totally clean and bore the heck out of me.
You know, bodybuilding did it a while back, like in the 90s.
Exactly.
They went totally roid-free, and everybody was like,
nobody cared.
They're not freaks anymore.
They're not cartoon characters.
They went right back to allowing drugs.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah.
So not allowing it, just not being as strict.
Well, not testing it.
Just not testing.
And baseball is the only sport that uses blood tests.